Hey Leon,
Hi. Hey. You look like
it's
you're in a lovely place. Hang on.
I'm on a short holiday to Switzerland with my daughter who's visiting us and my wife. So I thought, why not take advantage of that? It's early morning and outdoors is good, isn't it?
I mean, it looks like a photograph because nothing's moving, but it's real. Yeah, I mean, look at that. That reminds me of Switzerland. Yeah, quite lovely.
Yeah, it
Uh,
is. It
Yeah.
is, and it clears up a little bit more. You'll see some snow as well. It's beautiful.
What is the name of the place that you are in? What is its
So
name?
Beatenberg, this place,
Beaten. How do you spell
Beatenberg.
that? B.
Beatenberg.
Oh,
Beatenberg.
like literally like
Yeah.
Beatenberg. Okay.
So
Wow.
not too far from Interlaken, and we are probably 15 minutes or so, or 10 minutes from Interlaken.
Okay. Well, I
But
have
it is
been through the Interlaken region before many
mm,
years ago,
right.
in the winter, in the dead of winter.
Mm.
So I don't know if I've passed by on the train, saw Beatenberg, but it wasn't green. It was frozen solid out there, everything, and very
Yeah, I can
white.
imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine, and more of that coming up for you, is it? In Canada?
The frozen stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for the reminder. Yeah. Yeah. More of the frozen stuff. A lot.
Mm,
And
mm.
forest fires. So either
Oh,
it's
yeah.
burning to the ground or it's freezing cold. It's going to be just
Yeah.
a lovely experience. They
It's
don't have
it's really
forest fires
interesting.
there, though.
Y- Yeah, not many, not many.
No.
But it's really interesting. I was listening to you talking to Rohini, where you were talking about, say, what Asia offered to you, and how Canada is must feel like. And I didn't finish listening to it. I wonder if you spoke about it. It might be something like going home to people, everybody.
You mean in terms of what I'm anticipating in the experience?
Both, whatever comes. I mean, let me set the context.
Yeah,
What you were saying in conversation with Rohini was how when you were drawn to explore what is your own work and what is your own truth, you were drawn towards Asia because you felt that also gives you kind of a fresh start away from the
yeah,
people who knew the old you.
yeah. There was definitely a part of that. I don't
Yeah.
feel that going back so much. I mean, there's obviously distance between people in the sense that I haven't seen many people for 30 years.
Mm.
But with so many people that you know well but don't see for long periods of time, I'm sure you have experienced this. When
Mm.
you go back, it's almost as though it's just been a while since you've seen them and life just picks up
Yeah.
kind of, where it left off without
Yeah.
much
Yeah.
interruption because there's something in the connection that never really faded.
Yeah.
So I expect that'll happen too. But the truth is there's no part of me that really wants to go to Canada. There's no there's no part of this that can't wait or is looking forward to or sits in great anticipation of. There is none of that. I am much more of the, well, we're going, so let's just trust this and see what comes out of it.
Mm.
But that's very different than the move to Asia because the move to Asia had that also, but it also had the great anticipation, the great
Mm.
excitement, the looking forward to, can't wait piece. And that there is no part of me that is inhabiting that space right now.
I get that. I get that. Um, um, and I've experienced that a bit too. And I'm up to some movement as well. Me and my
Oh yeah.
family, my wife
What are you
started
up to?
Houston. We are moving to Houston, US.
Wow. Now,
Yeah.
okay. I have certain impressions of Houston. Why Houston?
My wife will work out of Houston. Her company is moving her to Houston. She is into the industrial gases, and that's the place to be for those kinds of companies. They have a big
Okay.
presence there, and I'm kind of tagging along. And so I'm being open to it as well. As you might recall, we are presently in Paris, and
Yeah.
majority of my work ends up being online since
Okay.
I never learned French fully. So Canadian people might know, of course, far better
All
than me.
right.
But uh, now that this Houston thing is coming up, I'm also, I would say, open. Let me see what shows up. But another thing that seems to happen in my life quite often is this 4-year stint thing. All my life, it's
Mm,
almost been as if every 4 years, me and my wife have moved. Sometimes
interesting.
together, sometimes on our own. Okay, why don't I want to go and teach at a university in an Indian village? My wife, Bela, let me go for 4 years on my own, and we go with anticipation. So I've got this formula of relatively clearly worked out. So every time there's a movement, I start drafting in my mind what is possible.
Mm,
so so what could be next? Let's see what
right. What could
happens.
be? Yes. Does that shift something for you when you do that?
So it does. I mean, it's about putting you at the max level of yourself. It's like the being, bringing all the being together in terms of, okay, what would be the truest version of you in this
Mm,
new place that you're going to?
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, dropping whatever
Interesting.
is left of the pretense and the
Yeah.
discomfort, or
Yeah. Yeah. And opening yourself up to, in this
yeah,
case, at least in your next move, a very new cultural experience.
yeah,
Just immediately upon arrival. I mean, France to America, what a difference. France, Paris, the cultural capital mecca of Europe, to Houston, Texas, right? I mean, your whole world, your immediate world is just going to flip in such a dramatic way. And those cultural influences, yeah, I find even the thought of what is the best self that I want to bring, I still find there's just some kind of an adaptation process that I cannot explain. Like, and I'll share what I mean.
Hmm.
I'm at the point now where I can travel to any country in Asia, even countries I don't live or haven't been to often. I can disembark from the airplane, and within an hour or two, I feel right at home. And it doesn't matter what the culture, doesn't matter which country in Asia, same thing. I get off the plane in Canada, and I feel like a foreigner in a foreign land. And that feeling doesn't go away for weeks. And yet I'm Canadian. So this is what I mean. I'm doing the conscious piece that you're speaking about around what is that best version of me, or what is the experience within myself that I desire to have no matter where I go. But yet this piece seems completely it's inexplicable to me because I don't understand what generates it. Like, how is it possible that I can still land in a country that I've never been, although it's in Asia, and be at home within a short period of time, but not have that same feeling in my home country where I lived for 25 years? So it's an inexplicable thing that seems to add a kind of layer
Hmm.
to no matter what I'm choosing, is the sense in Canada, at least, as I'm still a duck out of water. Then the adaptation process, I have to give myself much longer to go through. Sometimes weeks, I suspect it may be even a few months to adapt, to really start to feel like I'm at home and I could just relax. Like, whereas, I get off in Myanmar, Burma, it's like an hour later, I'm relaxing with something like, how is that? So that piece of it, and I can't, like I said, it's inexplicable to me because it's something that seems to be happening at an unconscious level over which I can see no conscious, like I have no conscious, maybe power, maybe that's the word. Like it's I'm powerless in the face of it, or at least that's the feeling.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you get that?
Yeah, yeah. When you say that, now I'm kind of recalling our conversations that go on at home. My wife's favorite place to be is our home city, Delhi, where all relatives are, all friends are, familiarity, food particularly. She loves it, and I love it too. But for me, it's that kind of feeling which you just spoke about. Except I, I in my interpretations, I felt I like the quietude of working out of home, where there aren't too many people in Paris. It gives me a lot of space to be in a space where there's nature, trees, and river. I sit by it, have conversations in these kinds of settings instead of there is so many people that we are going and meeting in Delhi. And spending too much time with. I felt it was that, but now that you say it, there is something. Perhaps it's that old energy that I left behind. It's perhaps that kind of the feeling that what I dealt with when I was there. I don't know yet.
Yeah. There's just something there, an inexplicable something that gives rise to an experience over which I have no control, and yet is very much real and palpable, and sometimes disconcerting and uncomfortable. And then I'm expecting that. That's why I was curious if you get that too when you move.
I do, and I can put a finger at so many things. Then you start thinking, okay, it's got to do with the traffic on the road, it's got to do with the pollution, or it's got to do with too many people that I'm meeting, and it's too much, pull on me that, okay, come here, come there, or we are coming, or whatever. There's so many conversations happening. I like the silence of this place, but it's not quite any of these things, perhaps.
Maybe it's not. Yeah. Canada. There was something I realized the other day about, you have to leave the box, if you will, a cultural box very often to understand that there is a cultural box to begin with. And anyone who's left their home culture for another can look back and say, okay, now I can see the shapings of my culture, and I can see how it shaped me and gave rise to the person that I am. And I still see myself today valuing things that I'm sure were taught to me a very long time ago, which bump up against the way things are valued here in Taiwan. And yet somehow there's a part of me that was shaped by these in such a way that I have to be very conscious to kind of let them go as values, because they create a kind of resistance in me. So I'm seeing over the years, I've started to see this cultural box that I'll call Canada. And it's more than just a set of values. It's an energetic quality. I went to the Canadian Taipei trade office with my daughter to renew our passport. We walked into the office, and the first thing my daughter said was, "It smells like Canada in here." And then I thought, and it feels like Canada in here. Now, isn't that to me curious? How is it possible that you can take a national smell and transport that to an office in the middle of an Asian city, and then somehow create an energetic container that is a microcosm of a macro culture somewhere else? And yet I felt it the moment I walked in the door. So then I get off the plane in Canada, and I'm feeling that same, and I begin to realize energetically there's something to every land. I don't know, I get off the plane in America, and I feel that everyone is carrying such fear. Like it's just in the air. Fear of each other, fear of whatever. It's baked in. And it doesn't mean I get off the airplane and I see all these people screaming in fear. There's just an energetic quality of fear. And I don't feel that in Canada. But what I feel there is what I call the policing cage. So Canadians do such a brilliant job at making sure that we police each other to the degree that we hardly need police. You don't see police out anywhere. But everyone is so following the rules and the social constructs. It's like they're walking on eggshells around each other, putting on a very polite face, but deathly afraid of stepping on your toes accidentally. At least you get a backlash for crossing some kind of a line of social etiquette. There's this kind of energetic box that we all live in as Canadians. And I'm coming out of Asia, where everything is a lot more, sort of, almost get killed walking across the street going to 7-Eleven every day. It's like kind of the Wild West of experience, right?
Yeah.
We step on each other's toes, proverbially speaking, all the time. Not literally, but, and there's this energetic quality to the spaces that we inhabit. And then noticing for myself, like, despite all the inner work that I've done over the years, despite everything that I have tried to cultivate from that being level, the environment has an impact. It just continues to impact. My curious mind wants to understand what that is, like energetically speaking, what gives rise to these feelings. So I'm starting to look at the Canadian culture and its lens of how it comes to just following the rules. Maybe that's the best way to say it. Follow the rules culture, and everything will be okay kind of culture. This is where I'm at. I'm just lately, as I'm thinking about moving back to Canada and reflecting on all these things, I can never get past the feeling of the cultural box that I'm about to enter into. And I'm not yet sure what it will take to shake it, except perhaps adaptation that takes time. Maybe.
When I was, I say, there were conversations around energy that I used to sometimes hear that people would say, what great energy. I visited this place and there was such vibrant energy. I couldn't understand it at first. I mean, this was not something that resonated. I couldn't put my finger on what it meant, but now I know what you mean. There is, so there may be, it may exist in conversations, or even in perhaps subtler forms, in thoughts that we have shared, and we have the thinking we have left behind, and it shows up in the way that we live, in every way possible. For example, a small thing that comes up to me, and it's such a subtle thing, it doesn't even perhaps have meaning for anybody else. When I look at the pictures of Houston or US, though it's beautiful in its own way, I find the grass is all trimmed perfectly. And the way that French do their gardens, there are patches where the grass is perfect, but they like to patch a little bit of this plant here, this plant there, this one there, this one there. It looks all chaotic and beautiful in its own way.
Yeah.
And it's not that they don't trim everything. If you see at Shalimar, they have also trim even the trees to be shaped almost perfectly. But I was kind of wishing there's more elbow room for,
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. For the wild to come through, or for the disorganized to come through, or whatever it may be. Yeah, I feel that. Yeah.
But I'm also kind of drawn to the second thing that you said in the same context, which is this idea of trust and faith, and also looking out for what could be our
that
work
has
in
to
these
be there
places.
at least.
Yeah.
Otherwise, for us, we lose that connection with really the essence, because the environment is a malleable, changing piece of our world. But yeah, that deeper sense of connection has to come through, and looking through the lens of that at the world around us. It has to be there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think you and I would be quite, well, a little bit bored with life, being like just doing the thing every day. I think it's much more, it's kind of like this learning edge to be sitting on it and constantly looking for the emerging potentials in a situation. It gives a kind of life to any moment.
Yeah. And I'm also curious how we might be contributing. So it's life contributing in its own way through you and me, and what do you take there, and what do you have to offer to Canada, say, for example?
Yeah,
I'm sure there is something that life may channel through you.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the hope. Well, I shouldn't say it's a hope. It's a knowing that there will be something. And if not Canada, our good neighbors to the south, America, offer a playground of possibility.
Indeed.
Because of the nature of that land. America is the land of everything in a funny kind of way.
Yeah.
Of the highs, the lows, the goods, the bads, the uglies, the beautifuls. Right? They're not quite so follow the straight and narrow as Canada. They're willing to go off and do whatever. So yeah, I think if not Canada, the US will provide.
Yeah, that's what excites me. That's what keeps me in the zone of possibility. So let's see what happens, kind of thing.
Where are most of your clients that you're working with located?
That's really interesting, Leon. Majority of them are in India. Around 35-40% are in rest of the world, all over, including Australia, US, and Europe.
Are they
So
mostly India-based, like Indian natives?
yeah, originally Indian. Majority of them, almost 80%, 90% of them are Indians, or Indians settled abroad and elsewhere. So, but as I'm kind of trying to stay fluid and seeing what shows up next.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. In what comes up, there may be some of the old which kind of finds its own expression, but I'm curious about what shows up in the next way. I'm every time I move, I'm filled with energy, with this energy of anticipation of, okay, I want to try this, I want to try that. So
and see what comes of it.
What comes up. So I'm really curious.
So that is there for you. Anticipation is there, kind of excitement, energy, looking forward to. That is there, despite the great gulf between the Texan culture and the Parisian culture.
Indeed, it is there. In some way, it is definitely there. I'm really looking forward to it from that point of view. That let's see, the thing that you say about US, that let's see what becomes possible.
Yeah.
So let's see, and or what is this openness about the place, or we also sense that this conversation around coaching and the kind of coaching which is deep, spiritual, or it may be discovering. This seems to be, a lot of it seems to be originating out of US as well. So one is curious about what shows up there. Of course, Asia has its own flavor, and it's beautiful. Let's see. I think the world is becoming smaller as well. I mean, so it's very difficult for you to stay at any one place like that. It seems like that to me right now, the way the life is going.
Yeah, but you're moving fairly regularly. So did you move to Paris just 4 years ago then?
Yeah, 3. So 1 year because COVID. So in India, I'll come several places, and then I went briefly to a village in India where I taught for 4 years, and then COVID came, so we were in Delhi during the shutdown period, and during the period, my wife started working for the company in Paris. So the 1 year out of the 4 went from India, and then we moved to Paris. Initially, I wasn't so sure that I'm moving because I felt I'm still going to go and teach. But then that is when I switched to coaching full time. And it was beautiful. I mean, every one of those moves has served me wonderfully.
Yeah.
It has indeed. Let's see what comes.
And it will continue to.
I'm sure.
Yeah, because
it's an
everything
adventure.
I know about you is one who's quite open to the world as it comes.
Yeah.
And that's a quality that allows people to generally thrive no matter where they land.
I'm hoping. And one of the things that shows up, in fact, in social settings too, it's been something which had been going on. My wife loves people and meeting a lot of people, energy, and I love her. What she would, I'd love. She brings me to a lot of people, and what I've found is now what I take along is myself. So I'm going all of myself. See if that helps, if that brings any value.
What was going along before? Half of you?
Resenting. Okay, like, okay, I don't like this about you, I don't like this about them, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So now I take all of myself, which means staying as much of core me rather than letting that deviate, holding on to the core self. The kind of conversation that you spoke about it with Rohini, which was about, okay, being very open about yourself. When you spoke about, okay, there was a phase when you decided that it's time to open and be seen fully.
Yes. Yeah. That was about maybe 15 years ago. Yeah. Yeah. That was
That
a
kind of thing.
difficult time.
Yeah.
It was a good time, but it was difficult in terms of, the being seen, visible in that way piece of it
Mhm.
really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was it that you wanted to focus on? I know we just kind of naturally took the conversation down a thread, but I wanted to make sure that we
Yeah.
do touch on what it is that you most were looking to gain or to explore or to experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that came up to me was two. There aren't too many. It's just got 2 points that I would just put them out there and see if which
Okay.
one would you like to pick. One of them is that the practices seem so much like meditations. They are meditations. Slow down. So instead of of course, we invite the clients to do that as well. But one can practice this on one's own, release the agenda. In fact, when I was just a few moments before we connected, I was releasing the agenda of what happens here. So it's as if so more and more you you know deeper
Yeah.
sense of self. It can be the clients or oneself. You know, being spacious with oneself and pursuing. So I'm just curious about if these practices come to you as meditations as they do as they seem to be to me.
When they first came to me, I wouldn't say it came as a meditation.
Mm.
And even now, I'm not certain that I've seen them as meditations, more as, how do I say it? I guess maybe I should ask you first what when you say the word meditation as a meditation, before I say anything else, what is your image of a meditation?
So focusing on an inward idea
Okay.
of one,
Okay.
right, rather than outward. It's like working inward and also doing it with some amount of intention and concentration on a singular idea. Like, for example, practicing silence. Yesterday, my daughter planned for us to go to a set of caves, which are just around the corner here. I don't remember the exact name of the place, but not too far away. And these are huge caves. I mean, just a labyrinth. You keep walking in, and it's, they are dark and the water is flowing at certain places. So when you are going deep inside the cave, there are patches where there is no sound whatsoever, except a momentary or an occasional drop of water falling somewhere. And then you walk a few hundred feet. It's a very long cave, so you keep walking up and down. And when you're walking deeper, then there is such gush of energy of water. So you sense tremendous energy of sound and then there is moment of silence. So
Mm,
I was drawn to that idea of being still and silent in that
yeah.
idea. So it appears that kind of thing is meditation too. Or when one is pursuing the deeper sense of self, one is actually allowing oneself to pursue it, chase it, or descend into, gravitate towards the deeper sense of.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And in that image, I
Mm.
would then say, yes, those practices become meditations because they are in fulfilling what you just shared about directing the thought, the mind towards the inner experience with an intention. And that intention, of course, is around what the practice represents. So it's an intentional set of meditative, perhaps, practices that take you in. Yeah, I would say then that would fit the image of a meditation. Yeah.
Although for you, it's so interesting that they got created in a coaching space, in a space with the client. How they got
Yeah.
created was not when you were on your own working on yourself within. It got created between you and the client. Am I right?
Yes and no. I think maybe we could say what got created was the experience. But at some point, I had to put words to the experience. And that's when I would sit down on my own with a pad of paper and a pen and begin to scratch out ideas. And I cannot even recall what led me to the idea of practices versus, let's say, a model. It was just something that one day was on the piece of paper. And I don't think it struck me as unusual at that time. At those years, I was spending a lot of time each morning just doing meditative journaling and writing. I've got notepads with loads of scratched out ideas and, mind maps and just whatever was kind of coming. And I would just put it all down, different scraps of paper. And so it wasn't as though I would look at that and suddenly think, Eureka, I've had this brilliant insight. It wasn't so much that, it was just more my continued reflections and musings around that. And then words began to, take shape around the practices. And there was my own work there. But they had to come from the experience that I was having with people in sessions and giving thought to what are we doing in this session space? What is it that allows us to go a bit deeper, kind of putting that question into my mind, or what allows us to create more of these healing moments? And some of them were pretty obvious because for example, silence, it was just so obvious. I was doing these light body healing sessions with clients in which we very intentionally sit in silence with each other for 20, 40, 50 minutes. Well, it's not hard then for me to say, well, what am I doing? I'm sitting in silence, so let there be silence was not, the trickiest thing in the book. And some of them came to me through, let's say I'd have a conversation with somebody. I had a mentor in Taipei, an older gentleman, and I used to go over to his place every few weeks, and we would just sit in his office and have a conversation about his life. And I would take notes, and sometimes he would say things, certain phrases, and I would just write them down. And sometimes something stuck that he said, and I was like, okay, that's something there. What does that mean? Like this idea of attuning to the deeper self. Like, what does that phrase mean for me when I hear it, right? And then I would just, all these things were just kind of I was capturing in different ways, thoughts and images, and they were finding their way to notebooks. And yeah, and then it came out that way. But they were always, then it was like, well, what's happening in the sessions? Like, does this fit? I mean, I'm attracted to that phrasing or that word or that image, no matter where I got it from. There's something there that's important to me, but does that fit with what is happening in the coaching space? And I have to bump those two up against each other. And sometimes it felt like, I think the wording is nice, the phrasing is nice. It's not really what we're doing here. Maybe really what's not happening. So I would discard it. Okay. That was the kind of process of filtering until I was able to say, yeah, there's a group here. They feel quite true for the experience that I'm having. And then there was a period of, putting those into the world through the first DCI. I'm pretty sure that I've revised the practices since the first one. I can't recall precisely the wording of the originals, but they had to go through a couple of rounds of iterations also, just to come to the point where, again, through teaching it, is it enough? Is it what's happening? Is it capturing it? Those questions kept coming in as well. So it wasn't in like a quick process. A lot of reflection around each of them.
It's really interesting. Something that occurred to me. Martin Heidegger, the philosopher, he has a favorite word for being. It's Dasein. It's German for being there. So now, in an idea of being, while one associates with oneself being, Martin Heidegger says being is reflected out there. So how you relate to people, how your being is showing up as your experience of living in the world is reflection of being, is the true being, because the truest being is silent. Perhaps I think that also brings up the next question, which is the idea of the core being. I know that as one is pursuing the shifts in being, or the shift in being, one is going, and the book invites you towards the experience of pure I am.
Yes.
The idea of I am that I am. I'm curious about listening to you more from that fundamental being. What would you like to share? What would you like to say about the core
You
foundation?
mentioned the piece of it being silence. Do you experience it that way, as just pure isness without anything around it, if you will?
The more one dives, my discovery, and I'm curious to listen to yours.
Yeah.
The more one dives, I found there is the silence. The discovery of silence gets subtler. The noise gets subtler. So there is still, and it gets pleasant. It gets the quieter it gets, the more pleasant it gets. It gets energetically still. It gets. So I remember a conversation with a master where I in my meditations, I used to find myself in tremendous amount of energy and bliss. And so this master told me that, go forward. What are you doing? Don't get stuck there. So, and it resonated in that moment. He answered a million of my other questions. So it came with a certain sense of authority. I was here accomplishing stuff, validating my experiences, that this is exciting. But now when I dive deeper, I find that this, like the bliss is, or the energy, the happiness, whatever one might feel there, it's only something which is more of what one can just stay present to, and discover more around, and go more in the silence. So I'm curious to know.
Interesting. Let's sit with that for a minute. Yeah, that one of the pieces that for me always I liken that sense of I am to just almost like a spark. Like I do feel it as an energetic. Like I don't feel it as absolute stillness of itself. You know what I mean? I feel it as though it is more like, I don't know. In physics, they've got these things called quarks, right? They break down all matter into these little, strings of vibrating energy bits. Kind of like that. I mean, if you look at an object, it looks sitting there, it is immoving, it is still in and of itself. You look at your table, it is absolutely still of itself. But we know that, it's a little like that. I get this when I'm with it, I just get this sense of liveliness. Yeah, not void of life, not lifeless in that placid sense, but liveliness is in a kind of energetic spark. And what that spark for me wants to do is influence, I shouldn't say it wants to, because I don't think that's the right it's not the right words. It's not a want. It simply does. It is. So it doesn't want. It simply is. When I allow it, influencing my mind and moment by moment experience of myself and life. Right. I have this image in the book about, the essential self being kind of like a light that kind of, light upon light, that image, and the light of me kind of, it's almost as though it wants to not hearing my wording again, I gotta find the right words. It influences of its own nature when I allow it, meaning I create the space in the totality of me for that to influence the way that I experience myself and then life on a more visceral, physical 3D plane. How do I say? Yeah. And I know what you're saying. Like, there are people who have spoken about going into the great abyss of bliss, if you will, where they go in and there's a complete sense of dissolution of self in that. I have never gotten to that point where that has been anything for me other than a fairly momentary experience. I mean, I could say a few minutes or 5 minutes, but it's never gotten to the point where, which I've heard from some people, that it just becomes this almost all-consuming experience which they do not wish to depart from. Like, there's a part of them that says, I'm willing to give up all the physicality of life just to be able to be in this blissed out state of absolute oneness where even the sense of me has dissolved. And while I have touched that, I think there's still a part of me that loves being me. There's still a part of me that loves this life so much and all the fun and games we're having in it, but I don't yet want to dissolve into the abyss of bliss to that extent. Right now, maybe the abyss of bliss would say to me, that's because you haven't really gone here long enough. If you spent longer here, you would never want to leave. And then maybe that's true. So maybe there's a part of me at a very deep soul level that says, well, then let's not do that. Let's not do that because we're not really ready for that or desiring of it, because we really want to see what it is to come alive in this 3D, 4D world that we live in. And how do we most come alive? And that's when I feel like these times of connection with that essence is just like this roaring force of energy that wants to move through. Again, I use the word wants to because that's not the right word, is moving through when I get something out of the way enough for it to do that. And that's usually my little monkey mind that wants to, think about things and understand things and assess things and reflect on things and make things happen and create things. Like, that mind, wants to get in there and kind of, move things along. But it influences that part of me when I really allow it. And that's when I find the most joy can come through. That's when I start to feel true joy, like waves of joy, inexplicable, just joy. It's like, whoa. And then my mind goes, that was really cool. Right? This is great. Starts thinking about it right away, analyzing it, little voices. But that's where I am with it. I don't know if that.
No, it's beautiful.
Makes sense to you.
It's beautiful, and something that acknowledges it is one of DCI's classmates, Poonam Bharti, is leading a book reading class of Gita, Bhagavad Gita. So in that there is a shloka where there's an invitation to let the breath merge in the energy. So there is a small mention of that. So there is. There's an invitation to focus on energy, which was there. I'm also curious about another thing that you spoke about in another interview, which was so delicious, and that I wanted to see how to practice that. It's that living in communion, and I get that flavor of it when I listen to you. I'm just curious to have more light on whatever is coming to you when you say that.
You asking me that question was a little bit of a stunner for me, because I thought, if anybody that I know lives in constant communion, it's Amit. So I thought, I'm going to first ask him, like, where's the question coming from? Because it feels to me like Amit knows like what that is, because Amit is doing that. His life is that.
Well, it's something that I value. I'm curious about it because you put the finger at it in words. You do it so brilliantly, and you say, my days go in communion. I spend my days in communion. And that's exactly what it's something that I value, which is this idea of the kind of energy and energetic bliss that you spoke about, the joy, making it last day long.
Making it last, yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that I go through all day, every day in blissed out joy.
Yeah.
There are times when I'm still as human as it gets, pissed off at my son for leaving his bowl of cereal in his bedroom and the ants filling it. How many times have we told you? Like this, those parts are still there, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that, it doesn't mean that I'm no longer human or that I don't feel the edges of the human emotion spectrum when we might talk about the heavier edges like anger or irritation or, stress around getting something done. That all still comes in. I still experience those things. I'm definitely anything but the all peaceful, you talk to my family. I'm not the guy who's just like peace. And, but I'm not the guy who goes really angry for very long. Like if I'm angry for like a minute. I don't have much value for anger for very long. Like if it comes out, it's just like a bit of a burst and it's like, that's done. Not good enough. I communicated that bit and we move on. And I find myself coming back more and more just quite rapidly to a kind of equilibrium. But my personality is I'm a very expressive person. If you've done the social styles indicator, if you've ever seen those, like driver, expressive, amiable, and analytical, I'm definitely an expressive. That's just my nature. And sometimes I'm very loud and exuberant, and I am silly and goofy. And sometimes I'm, a little bit down and okay. So it's all there. I don't have yet to find this kind of, I'm the walking guru that just moves through life like this. No. Yeah. But my mind enjoys an almost continual inward, let's call it conversation with spirit. Almost continually. Just even like, hey, how you doing? Hey, this is kind of fun. Anything you'd like me to know now? Anything you'd like me to be aware of right now? And I just have these inner communion conversations continually, very consciously. Anytime I take on any task, for the most part, there's a moment of, well, what shall we make of this? What shall we do with that? And then allowing myself to be kind of informed in some way to then make me more conscious in that moment, make me more aware of myself in that moment or aware of others in that moment, perhaps the right words that need to be said or shared are more likely to come through in that moment because I've taken just that moment of pause to just reconnect with the spiritual. Sometimes it's just a matter of feeling something in my body or just a matter of noticing the world I'm in. I often end up going, how did I get here? This is kind of different. And I look around at where I'm at. It could be 7-Eleven, and suddenly I go, I'm in 7-Eleven. This is kind of interesting. But, just that kind of, no matter what's going on, it's not always this idea for me of deep sacredness. Yeah, there are moments of the day or there are moments in my life when I like to be in sacred spaces. And I consider a coaching space to be a sacred space. I consider this to be a sacred space. But I'm not always acting like everything is perfectly sacred. But I do still enjoy the recognition that I am part of something greater and can have that inner kind of dialogue or awareness all the time, even if the thing looks like I'm cleaning the kitty litter box. People will say, no, there's nothing sacred about cat poop, right? It's just, you got to clean the cat poop. It's got to be done. Okay. But you know what I mean, right? Like I don't walk through life like everything's just like, that's just not me.
Yeah, I get that.
And I'm not this perfectly keeled guy either. But it's just the inner place that I like to turn to with such regularity. I think that's the core of it.
Yeah, that's a beautiful invitation as well. I mean, I really enjoyed what you said about it. There are two other things that I'm curious about. You could pick either of them. One is this idea of when you describe spirituality, you speak in terms of aliveness. And it's not so much as verbal perfection that but the way that you describe it becomes real to the listener. When I'm listening, it becomes palpable. So that's one. And the other is, I'm curious about what's spirit for you. When you say spirit, I'm just curious. Once again, it's not the perfect definition. It's just about, okay, because in your description, it comes alive.
Yeah.
Just curious about it.
And I know that for everybody and I say this in the book too, that everyone needs to define what spirit with a capital S is for themselves. And we'll all do it based on our upbringing, our religious teachings or lack thereof, of our own personal experience, or just the way that we like to conceive of spirit, just in the mind, right? And this idea that spirit, this vast entity of consciousness and life, some people call it God, some people call it source, some people call it the divine. It's the idea of the vast intelligence that supports all existence, the vast intelligence that gives rise to all that is. To me, that's spirit. And there are going to be many facets of spirit. For example, some people say, well, there's angels. That's a facet or an aspect of grand spiritual expression, that there's something that we might say, a set of entities called angels. Okay, great. Those things can be there for people too. And when I talk about spirit with the capital S, sometimes I just refer to all of it, all that unseen reality which supports human existence, universal existence, an intelligence, a resource, a partner that is in us, works through us as much as we are in it. And therefore, this idea of, separation, we talk about the egoic sense of separation, how that falls apart when we really truly experience spiritual reality as one. But I do sometimes carry this idea that there is in this something called an individual. There is something unique about each of us that I'm not really a proponent of I don't exist. There are some teachings that go there. If you get right down to essence, you disappear into the wave and you don't exist. And maybe at some ultimate fundamental level, that's true, but it doesn't serve me to hold that in this life. What serves me better is the thought that I am a unique individual expression bestowed with a kind of gift. Let's call it the gift of personality. That personality is something utterly essential and almost like inseparable from the beingness that I am. I wish I could describe it more. It's more than just what I like and don't like, or there's something that is unique, that makes me unique, that makes you unique, that if we stood in this universe of 50 quadrillion beings, there would still be Amit and Leon known as Amit and Leon, like recognized on a universal scale that there is something called Amit. One, it might be a different name, doesn't matter. Just there is that, which is an individual I within this vast collective, right? So when I conceive of spirit in myself, I see that I have something that I call my spirit. And it is born of this essence me, interwoven with a personality that is me and distinct from every other personality. This is what makes the universe so incredible. We can have trillions upon trillions upon trillions of planets and personalities and probably never find two that are ever identical. It goes on for infinite. That's the level of creative intelligence we are within. But then I see this idea of spirit, that great existential reality, that omnipresent reality, and I am in it and it is in me. And it's a kind of a partnership. It becomes a conscious partnership. That's the piece that for me is important, that it is conscious partnership. And how that partnership manifests can be different for every person. That's what, again, is the creative aspect of how our life is. For some, they might say, well, the way that I create with spirit is I talk to my guardian angel. Okay, great. Or some others might say I channel a being, or whatever it is. It doesn't make any difference to me. To me, it feels like each of us has the right to work into, feel into that kind of relationship with spirit in a way that makes sense for us. And if it doesn't make sense, we just discard the rest and keep trusting that when I connect with my soul's yearning to grow as a spiritual being, to understand that nature of myself, that the right partnerships, the right understandings will naturally appear for me on the path that I am on. So my relationship with infinite spirit seems to be honed almost through the desire to grow my own spirit. And as I said, I often had these inner conversations with spirit, right? So it's like just this ongoing dialogue. And I don't do it in a religious way, because I don't really have much religion in my background. So I don't have all these ideas about how I must pray, or the way that must be ritualized, or a way that I must conceive of myself in relationship to that. Like I am small and it is big. Like all of that stuff is just gone. There's none of that. It's just purely the essence of me, which is unlimited spirit speaking to unlimited spirit and learning to connect with it so that it flows through as an intelligence field in me, and then can be expressed through me in some form of creativity that matches my gifts, talents, proclivities, passions in the world. Again, unlimited creativity when I allow spirit to work through me in a way that is perfectly right for me. So I don't know if that quite answered your question of what spirit is, but I just wanted to point out how I relate to it just at this point. And it's always evolving. Like, next year I may relate to it very differently. Right? This is kind of where I'm at.
Yeah,
now,
it's beautiful.
right?
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And this idea of spirit, any way we describe it, is never going to be enough anyhow. So the way you say,
exactly, right. Put some words to that. What a joke.
Yeah.
But yeah, we try.
But it is delicious to listen to you about this. And the last piece is about energy. I mean, you spoke about aliveness. That spirituality is aliveness for me, or when I become alive.
Yeah.
Say something
Isn't
about
it though?
that.
Isn't it for you too though? Like, isn't it like the juice of life? Isn't to explore the most essential aspect of that which we are, alive within the greatest spiritual existence. I mean, I think about this, like we are only able to see what 4 dimensions, basically time, space, right? Yeah. We exist in with that. Okay. If we took a rocket ship and we were just traveling out somewhere for, let's say we travel for 1 billion years, we'll get to some stars that sent their light here 1 billion years ago. We just keep going. And all of that exists within this 4D time space dimensional reality, right?
Yeah.
We're not even talking about the 5th dimension, 6th dimension, 7th dimension, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, dimensions that we can't, you and I, even conceive of existing, which are somehow layered upon or within this one, time space dimension. So to get a handle on the sheer scale of life, I mean, we can't get a handle on the 4D scale of life, like what's possible if we just take a rocket ship and go. That's just the 4D scale. What's possible beyond and beyond and beyond and beyond. And so when I think about spirit as life, it's an invitation to recognize that we are only just getting this micro taste of an existential possibility that we can grow into, and to look at it as a universal adventure above and beyond everything else. We are on an adventure, and each of us is learning of this adventure in our own little way on this little earth with its little lessons. And I say little because I have a feeling it's, we're learning just little tiny things about what we need to get by and thrive in this little tiny sphere, and that what we need to understand how to exist on far-flung dimensions of reality that we can't comprehend, that will be revealed. But to me, this gets exciting, like life as an adventure. Like, who doesn't like to go on an adventure? Most human beings, in some way, like an adventure, a little adventure, even if it's just an adventure down the road to see something that is happening down the road. We like that. What if we just view life as a great universal adventure of spirit, where we're going to become and are becoming a kind of entity, if you will, that far surpasses what we are sitting here being today. And without getting afraid, don't get like, oh my goodness, what does that mean? Like, I don't know what it means. I don't know what it means at all. All I know is that, therefore, I want to look at this life as a joyful, potentially, but often all kinds of flavored human adventure, a partnership with spirit that brings a certain kind of way of experiencing it. Like, I feel when we with spirit, the experience enriches. It becomes so much richer. I know that people who are not spiritual in nature and don't have any connection to spirit, who couldn't care less, they still can have really good experiences. They can still go out and enjoy the sunset. They can still go out and have wonderful dinners with friends and eat the best foods, and their mouth can be filled. But there's something, but when you bring spirit into it, that just amplifies it and makes it less about you at the same time. Like, it's not anymore about me. It's about, I'm experiencing something, some facet of this totality, let's say in my mouth, because I love that piece of chocolate. Like, it's now in my mouth, this facet of totalities. And I don't know what it is, but it just makes me just so much more appreciative, so much more grateful, so much more in awe. Like, it amplifies everything that I'm doing. And it unifies me with something much more because of the spiritual component to the adventure versus, just having the experience of some goodness in my life. I don't know if the same is for you. I suspect it is, right? I suspect it is.
It indeed is, and I've been rewarded with what I was seeking, which is actually your delicious firsthand languaging of this unlanguageable, this unfathomable, or it's difficult to describe, but you make it real in your experience because it's palpable, and you're with it. You're talking from here and now, sensing it.
Yes.
And can sense it, and so therefore there is tremendous joy in this communion that you created. That was the point of this. It's in fact,
yeah.
The point
Tremendous
of this
joy in the
conversation
communion.
was not about figuring anything out, beyond figuring out.
Yes. And that's why I find that the idea of spiritual relationships and spiritual growth and spiritual understandings more enriching than, say, religious growth or religious understandings. Because religion is often trying to show us a way to think. And I'm not saying it doesn't have a place, but often that place is baby steps. When you're ready to make much larger steps, you have to move beyond what religion is kind of prescribing as ways to think about life in your relationship with spirit. And the moment those steps go away and you start to just recognize that there is nothing but goodness available in this relationship, it becomes individual and it becomes creative and then co-creative. And then everything starts to take on a greater shine. That's when life really, it's almost like that's an accelerant. Like, now things are really picking up steam for people when they begin to truly understand the nature of spirituality, not as a way to have to think, not as a prescription for life, not as a set of do's and don'ts, but a creative relationship that amplifies your personal experience within life almost exclusively towards goodness. Like, things truly become better. Things taste better. They're perceived better. They sound better. All of the things that our senses provide to us become amplified, and they get woven in with things like gratitude and awe and wonder and, like surprise, and just that gets woven in. Now, who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want that?
Yeah.
Like, it seems to me like everybody should be like, yeah, like, sign me up. I'll take some of that. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
To me, that's what spirituality does. Sorry, go ahead.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I was just saying there's just more you with being with the life, more you're bringing yourself more fully to life.
Yeah, that's it, right? Isn't that spirituality, bringing more me to life?
Yeah.
That's it.
Until then, it waits. Till then, it waits. It's there, and we miss it. Or,
Yes,
it's
it just
inevitable
waits.
that we will, because whether in time or whatever, but it's waiting for us. And just come, just open yourself up.
That's just it.
Yeah. Brilliant, Leon. I'm deeply gratified with the experience that you generated, you created for me. Really, really grateful for this. And
You're welcome.
This is communion. This is satsang, as I would call it.
Yes. I had to look up that word when you said it. Satsang, I'm like, should probably look that up before I agree to it.
When I look at practice 2, I find satsang: release your agenda, live your spiritual values, nurture the healing space, invite the spirit, and let it lead.
Let it lead, because it's willing to show so much, right? It's willing to show so much. Now, it doesn't mean that we get answers immediately. Like, where's my answer? I really want it now. I'm stuck. Oh, what? There's no answer. Well, this is bollocks. This isn't true. Yeah. Look, we don't always get what we want immediately. That's just part of the human experience, right? Yeah. So there's a trusting element that we have to grow into. But man, it offers life so much more. I can't even imagine my life without spiritual reality. Like awareness. Maybe say, I can't imagine like what my life would be like. It'd be like food without salt or something, right? Bland.
It's that aliveness. You take that out, and then what is left? What you speak about, that extra spark.
Yeah. I mean, everything in the universe is created by what seem to be sparks. In universes, planets, bang, big booms, explosions, It's almost as though the universe is putting on a fireworks show for us constantly, Entire galaxies form through, big bangs and whatnot. Yeah. So why should our life be any different? Like, why would life create through us any differently than? And it doesn't mean that every human person is highly expressive like I am, or highly, exuberant about all things. But spirituality, no matter who you are, stirs something.
It does.
That amplifies the goodness. Yeah.
And amplifies is such a beautiful word. It's as if it brings it to that spark, igniting an explosion of liveness.
Yeah. So that's the piece, circling back, right? Coming back to you moving to Houston and me moving back to Canada, right? So regardless of the environmental context, which will want to have its way with us because it's there doing its thing, we're still going to find what we're looking for, in a sense, because what we're looking for comes from within. And it's just going to create a kind of experience. And we can sit in awe and wonder and joy, and at times in frustration and anger and whatever else comes up, because that's there too. And it will all be good. It will all be good. We'll have good experiences. We'll meet good people. We'll create good things. And we'll see another part of this world that needs whatever we bring. Whatever you bring, you still bring to Houston. You're not leaving it on the coaching calls because you work virtually. You bring you to Houston, right? I bring me to Canada. There's going to be impact in ways we can't yet comprehend. But just staying in that spark of possibility within and let it lead.
Absolutely. In gratitude, letting it lead and celebrating it, trusting it, putting one's faith and letting it. Brilliantly done. Leon, tell me, what would you call this conversation? What do we title it? Would you be good with us sharing it on YouTube and letting other people listen?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. I have no issue with YouTube or any other platform.
and so what comes
you
to
you use the word satsang. Satsang. Did I say that right? Satsang?
Yeah, that's right.
That's the word, because that's what you invited and that's what we're doing.
Right. Brilliant. Beautiful. So the word satsang is about truth and company. So it's about communion. It's about communion with truth.
Perfect. That's what we did. We communed with truth. At least our truth.
Absolutely.
Right? Our truth.
Unadulterated.
unadulterated, our truth. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It was brilliant, Leon. And who knows, since we are going to be not too far from each other, there may be more opportunities to.
I think there will be. The lands are connected. So it's interesting. When are you moving again? What is the date for your?
With just the paperwork happening now, could be 3
Okay.
months. What about you, Leon? July 1st, you said?
August 1st.
All
One
right.
more month. Yeah. So sooner rather than later, our lands will be connected.
Absolutely. Eagerly looking forward to
Yeah.
Reconnecting, perhaps in person this time.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leon. Thank you so much.
Satsang.
This was such a joy.
Enjoy the rest of this beautiful day that you are having. I can see it. Nature is calling to you. Look at that. Sun is going up a little higher in the sky. Midday coming. Beautiful. Go enjoy it all. Go enjoy it all, Ahmed.
Right, Leon. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks for making my day. Thank you.
You're welcome. Beautiful.
Bye.
Bye.